We just sort of finished the 10 Makkos. Again, almost 9.5, right? We're at the bottom of the 9th of the Makkos, so to speak. The Makkos are one of the themes of the Makkos is the idea that even though Paroi keeps on getting punished again and again and again, but at the same time he's stubborn, right? And he doesn't budge. He bends. At some point, it looks like he cracks, but at the end of the day, he never breaks. And he holds strong. Chazal say that really, the first 5 times that Pari reacted to the Makkos with this gvura, it was something that came from within. But after the 6th Makkah, Pari was really ready to let the Yidden go. And the only reason he didn't let them go is because of divine intervention. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu came, Vayechzak Hashem esleiv Pari. And that's what happened after Makkah 6, after Makkah 7, after Makkah 8, after Makkah 9, and then finally after Makkah 10, Pari sends the Yidden out. But the first 5 Makkahs, Pari himself was holding strong, and then it's the latter 5 where really Pari was prepared to let the Yidden go, but it was because of divine intervention that ultimately he didn't. And really, if you think about it for a minute, and this goes down as for sure a top 10 kasha of all time, how do we understand this idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going and he's manipulating the hearts and the minds of the Egyptians, specifically of Pari? We know the most basic tenet of Machai Vasai Ba'ilamai, the most basic tenet of understanding why Kadosh Baruch Hu created a world, created an Am Yisrael, gave us the Torah. It's because we have free will. Without free will, this world is meaningless. We're just a bunch of robots that are doing what we were programmed to do. We're just living some predetermined destiny. But our life has meaning because we understand that we have free will. It's the first parak of the Mesilas Yesharim. It's the most basic point of why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world. How does it make sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would go and he would rob Pari of his Bechira? It seems to be so keneged everything we know about the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu conducts himself with this world. Befrat is an Indian of Adyoy Moisei Techakaloi, Im Yoshumi Atekabloi. Again, one of the greatest kashas of all time. Who asked this kasha? If you need some Mar Mekoimis, the Rambam in his Yad Chazak in Perik Vav and Hilchas Tshuva, the Ramban in Parshas Va'era, the Sforin in Parshas Va'era, every single Rishon in Parshas Va'era. This is a kasha that everybody asked, and even after you hear all the Tirutzim, it's still a little bit Eino Yomer Elo Darsheni. So Lulei de Mistafina. And again, obviously, we can't answer a kasha like this. But lulei de mistafino, just to say a knetch. All it is a neifach. And that is, so there were 10 makas, right? Stating that, we know from the Agada, Rabbi Yehuda yonoisim behem simonim. Rabbi Yehuda used to give simonim to the makas. Ditzach, Adash, Ba'achav. What does that mean? So Ditzach is an acronym. It's Rosh Tevis for the first 3 makkos, Dam, Tzifhardeya, and Kinan. Adash is an acronym. It's a Rosh Tevis for Oroiv, Dever, and Shchin. Ba'achav is also an acronym. It's Barad Arba Choshech, and the base is B'chayris. It's referring to Makkos B'chayris. What does it mean, Rabbi Yehuda Hayonoisim Em Simonim? Ditzach Adash Ba'achav. What's the significance of that? What's wrong with Dam, Tzifhardeya, Kinan, Oroiv, Dever, Shchin, Barat, Arba, Choshech, Makkos, B'chayris. Every 4-year-old child knows the 10 makkos. Why did Rabbi Yehuda have to make a siman, the tzach hadash b'achav? Right, we know from learning Gemara, whenever you have a siman, there's some significance in the siman. It's usually said so that you should have an easier way of remembering it. Right, we have rebaits on this Indian. Certain svarim were written on siman, but this siman seems to be very frivolous. The tzach hadash b'achav, yeah, it's just short for the 10 makkos. What is the significance of the tzach hadash b'achav? So for that, we need to take a step backwards. And that is, we mentioned a few times as we went through these psukim of the makkos, which are extremely wordy, that we're accustomed to thinking that the 10 makkos were all 10 parts of one whole. In other words, there was an idea that Pari had to be hit 10 times, albeit in 10 different ways. But in terms of the pattern of how exactly the makkah was implemented, you would think would have been rinse and repeat. So there was a seder of how it happened, and that repeated itself. And really, if you go through the Rashis and Chumash, it seems a little bit like that's the case, right? Every makkah had 3 weeks of warning, and then the makkah itself was a week. And again, And we just repeat that. And what's the difference between one makkah and the other makkah? Right? Ein bein makkah's dam makkah's svardeya. Ella, this was blood and this is frogs or crocodiles. And there's no difference between svardeya and kinim other than this is frogs and that's lice, etc., etc. But when you look at the psukim, it doesn't feel so much that way. Because the psukim present each one of the makkahs in such different ways that it almost feels like they're all a little bit different. Just to highlight the point, you have some makkahs that are mentioned in a very, very wordy way. There are some makkahs that are mentioned very bekitzer. I counted a little bit. I did some math. Barad is 23 psukim. Arba is 20. Just to give two examples. If you look at Kinim, 4 psukim. Shchin, 5 psukim. Even Dever, which was serious, is only 7 psukim. So clearly the presentation of the makkahs is very, very different, right? 23 psukim in the Torah versus 4. That's a 19-point lead. So obviously there's going to be a lot more mentioned in Barad than there is in Kinim. And the truth is, go through the psukim. By some of the makkahs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe to go warn Paroi. And by some of the makkahs, Moshe just goes ahead and with the snap of a finger, he actually just implements it. After some of the makkahs, Paroi goes running to Moshe and he says, daven for me. And after some of the makkahs, the Chartumim are there. By some of the makkahs, there's no mention of the Chartumim. Some of the makkahs, the Torah goes out of its way to say that it didn't affect the Yidden. Now we know none of the makkahs affected the Yidden, but read the psukim only say it by some of the makkahs, right? So again, the wordiness of the psukim seems to suggest that there's a little bit more than meets the eye. So I'll tell you a davar nifla that the Abar Benel says throughout his commentary on the makkahs. So this Abar Benel starts in Parshas Shmos and it goes already into Parshas Va'era. And if you take a look at the Malbim in Parshas Va'era, it doesn't quote the Abar Benel, but he very much goes al pi darkei shel Abar Benel. And really, we're just going to give a little bit of a Tayamel, it's Erev Shabbos, of this inyan, but in terms of pondering and understanding on a little bit of a deeper level what's going on with the makkahs. The Abar Benel says as follows. He says, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Paroi the very first time, and he tells him, Koi Amar Havaya Elikei Yisrael. So says Hashem, Yudkei Vavkei, who's the God of the Jews, the Hebrews. Shalach es ami v'yochaygulim abidmar. I want you to send them out for a short period of time. They're going to come to me for some festival in the desert. Vayemer Paroi. So Paroi responded. He said, Mi Havaya. Who is Yudkei Vavkei? Who is Hashem? That I should listen to what he says. L'shalach es Yisrael. No less to send his people, quote unquote, out. Lo yodati es Hashem. I don't know who Hashem is. V'gam es Yisrael lo yashalech. And I'm not going to send the Jews out. Says the Abar Benel. If you learn this pasuk carefully, what you're going to see is that when Moshe Rabbeinu came with his ask, Pari responded with 3 things. He said, number 1, lo yodati es Hashem. I never heard of Hashem. I have no idea who you're talking about. Now, really, in order to appreciate this, we're going to have to learn the next couple of shiurim. But just to give a little bit of a pshat, the Egyptians were notorious of the Avodah Zarah. Right? They were pagans. And the pagans of once upon a time, they didn't serve one God. They used to serve multiple gods. There was the God of this, and the God of that, and the God of the other thing. Right? Multiple. This is Greek mythology, lahavdol, Egyptology. This is exactly what the Egyptians did. So Pari says, I don't know, I'm aware of all these different getchkes. I've heard of this Avodah Zarah, that Avodah Zarah. Right, you can't even say them. But he says, I know about all these different getchkes that exist. I never heard of Yudkei Vavkei. Meaning, I have a database. You want them in alphabetical order, chronological order? What order? How would you like me to sort this? I could send you a spreadsheet right now with 1,142 getchkes. I don't have Havaya in my database. Right? That's what he's saying. I probably never heard of him. I don't even know what you're talking about. He says, besides, says the Abar Benel, what he was saying was that even if you're going to convince me that there's a Havaya, I might have missed one, right? Got to go back to school. But at the same time, you're suggesting that this Havaya is mashkiach on the world, and he has his eyes on the world, and he actually is paying attention and cares about what's going on? No way. Because that I for sure don't know. I mean, it could be there's a getch guy I never heard of. Like a dati, I'll be honest, I never heard of him. But to double down and to tell me that this Havaya is actually being mashkiach in the world, I know that the sun rises because of the sun god, and there's a moon because of the moon god, and it rains because of the rain god, etc., etc., etc. Right? There's the corn god and the soybean god. There's no way there's a Havaya that's mashkiach on the whole world. It can't be such a thing. And besides, you're coming to me like in this threatening way, as if not, right? You're telling me that he has power to actually do something to me if I refuse his desire and his wishes? It's not possible. I'm telling you, I am a big professor of Avodah Zarah. There's no Havaya. I never heard of him. Even if he exists, he's not paying attention to what's going on. And even if he knows what's going on, there's nothing he can do about it. Says the Abarbanel, Paroi, in this one verse, Ayin Sham, if you want to go through this a little bit better, was coming with three tainas. I don't know who Havaya is. He's not mashkiach in the world. So that this whole thing is silly anyways. And even if he was, he can't do nothing about it. So there's no reason I should even have to pay attention. I have to listen to him. And Moshe Rabbeinu was misfakeach with Parai. He says, no, Parai, you're wrong. I'm telling you, there's Havaya. He knows exactly what's going on. And if he wants to punish someone that doesn't listen to him, that person is going to be in big trouble. And Pari says, no, I never heard of him. And Moshe said there is. And says that Barbanel, this was the vikuach that was going on between Moshe and Pari. So they have a face-off. You want to know what's going on in that palace. They're having this theological debate. Moshe says there's Havaya. He's mashkiach on the world. And he's someone that has incredible power. And Pari is like, he doesn't exist. And even if he does, he's not mashkiach in the world. And even if he exists and has ashkacha on the world, he has no yuchaylos to do anything about it. And then finally, when Pari wasn't succumbing and he wasn't giving in, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, I want you to now go ahead and implement makkos. And the purpose of those makkos is going to be to prove you right and him wrong regarding these three theological points that you've been debating. Mi Havaya, there's going to be makkos to prove Mi Havaya. And the fact that Pari is saying, even if he exists, he's not mashkiach, there's going to be makkos to prove that he is mashkiach. And this, the Pari is saying, even if he's mashkiach, he's not a Bal Yecholos. We're going to make makkos to go ahead and we're going to show that he really is someone that's a Bal Yecholos. And you know how many makkos we're going to make to prove this out? We're going to make 10 makkos. So Moshe says 10. He says, why do we need 10, right? I don't know, maybe 3. Let's do 1 to prove Ani Hashem, and let's do 1 to prove that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mashkiach, and let's do another one to prove that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Bal Yecholos, who Bal Koiches Kulan, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do whatever it is he wants to do. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, you're right, you're saying very, very good. But these 10 makkos are really going to be 3. The first 3 is going to be 1, Ditzach, and the second 3 is going to be another one, Adash. And the third one is going to be another one, and that's going to be Ba'achav. And that's why Rabbi Yehuda's noise of them Simonim, because really each set of makkos represents another nekuda of vikuach that's taking place between Moshe and Parai in Pari's palace. Says the Abarbanel. Take a look at the Psukim. Says, take a look at the Psukim. Makkas Dam was the first makkah. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Moshe to tell Pari, Koyamar Hashem, Bezois Teda, that when you're going to do Makkas Dam, you're going to know Ki Ani Havaya, that I am a Kadosh Baruch Hu. The first Makkah, Lo Yodati Es Hashem, Bezois Teda, the Rashbam speaks of that over here. Now you're going to know Ki Ani Havaya. Now you're going to know that I'm a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that was the purpose of Makkas Dam. And that was the purpose of Makkas Svardeya. What was the third Makkah of this set? It was Makkas Kinim. What did the Chartumei Mitzrayim say? What did the Kishuf Machers say after Makkas Kinim? Vayoimra Chartumei Al Paroi, Etzpe Elikimi. He's right. He's saying good. The man's saying good. There is a Havaya, Etzpalikimi, because we know all the Getchkis, and I know all the gods and all the deities. I can't pull off a Makkas Kinim. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu could, must be, there's a Metzias that we were unaware of. There has to be something else. There's something different. There's Havaya. Makkas Dam starts, Bezois Teda Kani Havaya, and it ends, Etzpalikimi. What do you mean? Different Makkas? No, it's the Makkah of Ditzach. Ditzach started, Bezois Teda Kani Havaya, Zokta Barbanel, and it ended, Vayoimru Achartumim Al Pari, Etzpalikimi, with the clear akara that that's what's going on. And then there was another set of makkos. And the purpose of the next set of makkos, this is Adash. This is Oroiv, Dever, and Shchin. The purpose of this was to prove that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashkiach on the world. What does Moshe tell Paroi when it comes to the makkah of Oroiv? V'fleisi b'yomu aseretz koshen, Asher ami oimid oleh, levulti heyosham oroiv, lemanteda ki ani Hashem, Bekerev ha'aretz. By Makis Tam, it's Bezois Teda that what? Ki ani Hashem. Because what are we debating? Does Hashem exist or does he not exist? You'll see he exists. You're going to see that Havaya could do something that all your chevra, all your mishagoyim can't do. So Bezois Teda Kani Havaya. This, you missed something, right? You missed something. Yeah, you think? He said, but now, Makas, Aroi, the Mak of Adash, that's already a whole different avodah. And because that's a different avodah, and this is already Leman Teda, Ki Ani Hashem Bekerev Aretz, you're going to see this incredible hashgacha, because that's the purpose of what this next Inyan is. The truth is, throughout the Mak of Adash, by Aroi and by Dever, the Torah makes a big deal about the fact that the Makkah was only by the Mitzrim, right? The Makkah was not something that happened by the Yidden. The Hiflesi, right? By Makkah's Dever, Pari even sends messages, like he wants to know what's going on in Goyshim, like have those animals also been affected? Why is the Torah being madgish over here? Because here the Dogush, the purpose of the Makkahs of Adash is the Hashkocha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look at the Hashkocha. Look at this pinpoint Hashkocha. This guy, yeah, that guy, no. And that's why, even if it was true by all the Makkahs, but this is where the Torah is being madgishit, because that's the real Toyela, says the Abarbanel, of the Makkahs of Adash. Adash is all about not just that you should know that there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's the Manteda Ke'ani Avaya B'Kerev Ha'aretz. Then came the third set of Makkahs. And the third set of Makkahs was Ba'achav. It was Barad, it was Arba, it was Choshech, and it was Makkahs B'Chayris. Now the truth is, Makkahs B'Chayris is really an Inya B'fnei Atzmai, and we're going to talk about it Be'ez Hashem in the next year. So Makkahs B'Chayris is a little bit different, so all the Sfar Makdoshim, all the Rishonim say Makkahs B'Chayris is different. We're going to get to that. We'll explain it Shainemo. But the bottom line is, then came the next set of Makkahs. What happened by the next set of Makkahs? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Hashkeim baboiker. V'syatze lufnei pari v'amarta elov. Koyamar Hashem alekeo ivrim shalach es ami v'yavduni. Right? This is foreshadowing Barad. Ki b'pam azois ani shalech es kol ma'gevoisai elubcha u'ba'avodechu ba'amecha. Ba'avur teda. What are you going to know? Zok da barbenel vos zok the Torah. Ki ein kamoini b'chol haaretz. Not that I exist, and not only that I'm ba'aretz, but ki ein kamoini b'chol haaretz. Ki ato sholachti es yodi v'ach oischa v'es amcha ba'dover. V'ulam ba'avur zoisem adaticha ba'avur aroischa es koichi. Ulam an saper shmi b'chol haaretz. Because the tachlis of ba'achav, said the Abarbanel, was this Inyan. It's that you should chap, not just that I exist, not just that I'm mashkiach b'kerev haaretz, but that ki ein kamoini b'chol haaretz. And that's why Zok the Abarbanel, what's the theme of ba'achav? What changed a little bit by Achav? You know what changes? The Barad comes, what does the pasuk say? And what happened by the Mak of Arba? The pasuk says it was Azah. Harba, like the world that never seen and the world's never going to see again. And by Makkahs B'Chayris is going to be a tzaka, like the world that never seen and the world's never going to see. Because we're bringing out the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the chiddush of the last set of Makkahs. So says the Abarbanel that it was 10 Makkahs. That's how we were always taught. But Rabbi Yehuda, you're noisem bem simonim, the tzachadash b'achap, because what he was trying to say was that really the 10 Makkahs was made up of 3 sets of 3. Again, Makkahs B'Chayris is that one that needs to be addressed a little bit better. It's the tzach. It's Adash B'Achav. And the tachlis of the Makkis of the Tzach was that what? It was Bezois Teda Ki Ani Hashem. And the tachlis of the Makkis of B'Achav was of Adash was the Manteda Ki Ani Hashem B'Kerev Ha'aretz. And the tachlis of the Makkis of B'Achav was B'Avur Teda Ki Ein Kamoini B'Chol Ha'aretz. It's so mefurish in the psukim. Now, if you want the longer version of it, take a look at the Abarbanel and take a look at the Malbim, and they all explain it. But one of the themes that the Abarbanel and the Malbim both say is that when you understand that it's not 10 makkahs, but it's really 3 makkahs. The tzach is 1, Adash is 2, and Ba'achav is 3. A lot of the diktukim that jump off the page, that almost make it impossible to read the psukim, are going to come to life. You're going to see that there are certain themes. The first 2 of each set, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe what to tell Parah. The third one, Moshe just goes ahead and does it. Go through all the psukim, all the makkahs. You're going to see that's how it plays itself out. He says the first one of each set, the very, very first one, so Dam and Orov and Barad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, that I want you to go to Paroi, and he says, V'hisyatsev lifnei Paroi. That's the lashon that he uses. He uses a lashon, V'hisyatsev. You should stand in front of him. Nitzafta. The second one, it's Bayal Paroi. Right? Our parsha begins Bayal Paroi. It says Bayal Paroi 3 times in the narrative. Right? All the Torah of Bay, it's Gematria 3, because there's 3 Makkos and Parshas Bay. It's a very nice pshat, but it happens to say Bay twice in Parshas Vayir also, right? Because the second of all the sets of Makkos start with a Bayal Paroi. The third one, the Makkah just happens. But this is the mafteach. Just give me the mafteach. You want the shlisel of how to go through these psukim a little bit better and understand the pshutei shamikra. This is the mahalach. It's by understanding that the 10 makkos are really 3. Why 3? Because there's 3 vikuchim between Moshe and between Paroi, and that's what's playing itself out over here. The truth is, if you think about this inyan, it's a very fascinating inyan. Because what are the 3 things? Ani havaya, right? Bezois teda ke ani Hashem. The second thing is and the third thing is if you look in a siddur, when you daven Shemini Esrei, when you make a bracha, you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. The siddur says by Hashem you're supposed to have in mind because Baruch Hu exists, right? Vayodati es Hashem Baruch Atah Hashem Havaya. What are you supposed to have in mind by Elokeinu? So all the siddurim say this. You're supposed to have in mind that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashkiach bechol pirotenu. Additionally, he's a takif that's a bal yechaylas ubal koiches kulam. That's really the foundation of our faith. Our faith is emunah. The ba abar benel v'midan al shloisha is that number 1, HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists. Number 2, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a mashkiach b'chol pirotenu. And number 3, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a bal yechaylas ubal koiches kulam. And it's the psukim. It's the man. Bezois teda ke ani Hashem, it's l'man teda ke ani Hashem b'kerev ha'aretz, and it's baru teda ke ein kamayni b'chol ha'aretz. Hafla. Yitzias Mitzrayim is the foundation of our emunah, and these were the 3 nekudas that came out. And by the way, for extra credit, take a look at the Ramban and then the Parshas Boy. When the Ramban goes through and he talks about how all the oisis and the moifs and the whole tachlis was, so that we should know for future deiris what emunah is, he brings out all 3 of these points. Ayin Sham, we're not going to do this now, but Ayin Sham inside, it's so beautiful once you see the Abar Benel, because that's mamish the cherry on the top. This is the culmination of everything that's been going on throughout Yitzias Mitzrayim. So here's the Lulei de Mistafina part. Again, Lulei de Mistafina. Maybe you could say, what was the tachlis of the last 3 makkos? What was it all about? Say it a little bit better. So, if you ask someone that learns Chumash Rashi, you ask him, what's that? Can Kadosh Baruch Hu harden Pari's heart? Like, how did that happen? Did Pari harden his own heart, or did HaKadosh Baruch Hu harden his heart? What's he going to tell you? Oh, there was the first 5 makkos and the second 5 makkos. Now, first of all, that's a mistake. Just want to put it out there. That's a mistake. The reason it's a mistake is because, meaning to split 5 and 5, it's not a mistake, Rashi says it, but in your mind, to split 5 and 5 is a little bit of a toss, because Pari wasn't ready to let the Yidden out after Makkah 5. He was ready to let the Yidden out after Makkah 6, because the first 5 Vayechsaks was all Pari. So Pari was bringing on the 6 Makkah. Then the 6 Makkah happened, and after the 6 Makkah, Pari was really, you know what, I'm done. And there HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes in, Vayechsak Hashem is Pari. So again, in the visualization, 5 and 5 is a little bit of a misnomer. It's true, Rashi says it, hey and hey. But really, Pari needed a 6 Makkah. After the 5th Vayechsak came from Pari. Thus, he brought on the 6 Makkah on his own. After the 6 Makkah, at that point, he was already let the Yidden go. Now, Avos HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervene. Which means that what? When does the intervention come in? It's between Makkah 6 and 7. It's between the Makkah of Shchin and the Makkah of Barad. Which really means that before HaKadosh Baruch Hu got involved, what was Pari going to have? He was going to have the first 6 Makkahs. Dam, it's fine. Tzvardeya, my Khartoumim could also make frogs. Kinim etzbel again, but no, I'm still not so convinced. Or maybe I'm convinced Ani Hashem, but not that he's Mashkiach. Arov, I hear, that's a little intense. Dever, Shchin, game over. So you're not done yet. I'm going to bring on Barad, I'm going to bring an Arba, I'm going to bring a Choshech, and then there's going to be the whole Indian of Makkos B'cheres. Really, the inflection point, the turning point of the game, as it relates to Pari, was after Makkah Shchin. After Makkah Shchin, he was done. And the truth is, if you think about it, Al Pidi Abar Benel, you could understand it a little bit. Because he had the first 3 makkos, which proved out that there's Havaya. Okay, but it doesn't mean that he's Mashgiach. The second 3 makkos proves out that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also Mashgiach. When he chab that Havaya exists, and Havaya has moves that his guys don't have, that's Pelikim. And when he chab that he sees what's going on, he wasn't going to roll the dice to see how powerful and how strong HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. And at that point, he was going to let him out. But the Eibishter said, no, I need to establish Amunah. I need to establish Amunah. Like the opening psukim in Parashas Boy. Ulaman tesaper baznei bincha uven bincha es asher salalti b'Mitzrayim. V'yitatem ke'anei Hashem. And the foundation of the Yid's Amunah is Hoya hoive v'yiyeh mashkiach b'chol prateinu and takif bal yecholos bal koiches kulon. So I need to prove out bal yecholos bal koiches kulon. And as a result, there's going to have to be another set of makkos. Ba'achav. Pare was down for the tzachar adash. I'm going to bring that ba'achav because that's critical for the Amunah and the foundation of the Yid. And as a result, the Ramban in Parshas Boy would be ikach if we didn't have ba'achav. Because how do you know the Eibishter is bal yecholos about koiches kulon? That's something that was only manifest through the ba'achav. And that's what the Eibishter says, I want this. Because this is something that's very, very critical. So here's the punchline, I think. And that is, what's the ultimate vice of the power and the strength of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? He looks at Pare and he tells Pare, you know what I'm able to do? Forget about I could split the sea, I can make frogs, I can make these things happen. I can manipulate you and I could show you you're a nothing. I can toy with you. I can play games with you like you're my puppet. This is the ultimate declaration of Takif Bala Yecholos Ubal Koiches Kulam. You're a nothing. Bistak garnish. It's not pshat. My gun can shoot further than yours, and my sword is. That's not the nakuda over here. You're mamish nothing. I can play games with you. I can toy with you. Maybe the reason HaKadosh Baruch Hu was vayechzak Hashem eslei Paroi was because that was the whole point of what he was trying to show Paroi. It was the whole point of what he was trying to show us. Trying to show us that we should remember 3,000 years later that HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls the world. He doesn't just control the heavens and the earth. He controls us. You know, Rabbi Sol Salanta famously said that a Yid says Shema sometimes, and he could have in mind that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and by Echad he says on the one world and the Zayin Rikim and the Aret and the Daled Ruchas, but he forgets that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also God over him. Oh yeah, the Eibishter controls what's going on in here, and he controls what's going on over there, and these protests and those riots and these things, that's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but you forget that, you know, what happens to you today is also controlled by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The ultimate takif bala yecholos about koiches kulon is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Pare that I'm going to manipulate you. This wasn't stam HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking away the Bechira. It seems like it was more than that. And not just that, it plays itself out. It's not the last 5 makkos. It's a mistake. It plays itself out noch makkos shchin. Because, and the way that Bar Manel is explaining it with such oimik, it's after Adash. That means, really, the whole Vayachzak Hashem Eslei Pare is for there to be a Achav. The Spitz, Tachlis, and Toyeles, and punchline of the Ba'achav is the Vayachzak Hashem Eslei Pare. I don't think the Vayachzak Hashem Eslei Pare was a hechetimtza for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to show Ke'in Kamoini B'chol Haaretz. I think the Vayachzak Hashem Eslei Pare was the ultimate vise of Ke'in Kamoini B'chol Haaretz. It was a hechetimtza, of course, but it's also the ultimate. There's more Ke'in Kamoini B'chol Haaretz in the fact that Vayachzak Hashem Eslei Pare than there is in Barad Arba Choshech and Makas B'chayis. And that's exactly what the Eibishter was coming to show Pare. And that's this Inyan. Kan yechbadeti esliboy v'esleiv avadav. Not as a hechetimtza only that I should be able to make miracles. Faker dos alein is l'man tesaper b'aznei bincha v'bincha. I want you by the Leila Seder to tell your children that you are nothing without HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're a pawn. You're just a piece in his master plan. And the Eibishter can control every... Now, the Eibishter gave us Bechira. He gave us free will, but that's something the Eibishter chose to give us. But if the Eibishter decides not to, in 1 second, Vayechzak Hashem Eslei Pare. And there's nothing that shows the Ke'in Kamoini B'chol Haaretz more than that. Either way, again, this is a huge aside. Definitely gives us a better appreciation for Rabbi Yehuda HaYonoisim Behem Simonim, the Tzach Hadash Ba'achav. The whole principle, the foundation of our Amunah comes from the Makkos, drilling down to these 3 things that it says in your Siddur. If you look, and maybe Lulei de Mistafina, it's a little bit of an understanding of this inyan that Dafka by these last 4 Makkos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had removed the Bechira of Pari.